Well, it's time for the top 3 in tech. I'm Simon Constable, and we've got Brian Fitzgerald, tech editor, tech writer as well here at the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for being here, sir.
Sure.
You have taken gazillions of stories, gazillions and gazillions, and you got it down to just 3, so let's get going. Number 3.
Flappy Bird flaps no more.
This was the amazingly popular video game that was free, and the maker of it was getting such abuse that he said, no thanks, I'm taking it down.
What's so fascinating to me, and look, in the grand scheme of tech, it's not a huge story, but I can't think of another game on this magnitude that was talked about as much. Now, there was another game maker that posted a more than 8-fold increase in earnings last week, and that company, do you know which company that was?
Funnily enough, I don't. What was that company?
Right, so it was Supercell. They make the app Clash of Clans, or in heyday. They got some press, but not as much as Flappy Bird, this free, really hard game. So I thought,
and this was by a Vietnamese programmer, and it was getting a lot of ad revenue, and it was generating a substantial amount of revenue, and it pulled down. Anyway, couldn't take the heat.
Sure, whether he intended to or not, masterful stroke of PR.
Masterful stroke. I mean, someone needs to write a large check for that. That's what I've heard a lot of people say. Okay, it's time for number 2.
Icahn blinks.
That's unusual. Let's be honest. He rarely blinks, and this time it was with Apple.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know what I always found interesting about the Icahn Apple story was that, just think back 10, 15 years, when have you seen Apple strong-armed in such a manner? They really had to sort of, the run of their turf for so long, and so that to me was always intriguing.
And let's remind people what he wanted to do. He wanted them to put their cash hoard to work by buying back stock in large amounts, billions and billions of dollars.
50 billion.
And it is fair to say he had a good point. They do have a lot of cash there, and we're not, the shareholders are not paying the management to manage cash. They wanted to run a company, and so do something with it. And they basically said, well, we'll do something with some of it, but not all of it.
Right. Well, the ending, had such a fascinating ending. First, you had the ISS, the shareholder proxy firm, said, no, actually, we don't agree with you, Icahn, on what you're proposing for Apple. And then the next day, Icahn withdrew, but he claimed victory on that because Apple had bought back some 14 billion of their own shares when their own stock fell 8% after their earnings.
They did that in just 2 weeks as well. That was a period of 2 weeks, 14 billion bucks. That's a lot of money coming into the market. I mean, let's be real about it. Okay. That's interesting. We'll see if he comes back again, unblinks. Well, you never know. You never know with him. It's that time. It's time for number 1.
Snow tech removal. No, I'm only kidding, Simon. Comcast and Time Warner Cable, of course, that's the biggest story.
And Comcast going to buy Time Warner Cable, they say, for $45 billion. That is enormous.
1/3 of Apple's cash hoard.
But it is still enormous for a takeover.
Absolutely.
And a takeover in this sector. This is big.
What's big about it, right? So it's a big deal, obviously, big acquisition. And these are cable providers, right? But it's not just a cable or media story. This is a tech story at its heart. It's not really about the providing of video. It's about broadband networks, which to me is a bigger story there. And what I really am looking forward to with this over the next year isn't, well, will they, won't they be able to merge? But when do you see the number 1 and number 2 of any industry merge without some sort of hand-wringing that has to go on? Like, what's going on with this industry that kind of proposal could happen? And the CEOs, I mean, they have to say this.
Well, it's cord cutting is the word there. We know that people are feeling strapped for cash, and so they're cutting the cable and canceling.
Well, there's a lot at play here. Programming fees, again, broadband and competition. Anytime, like when Comcast says that they face stiff competition in cable from Google Fiber, which operates in 2.5 cities, I think?
I love the half a city.
Right, I think they're building up somewhere. There's some soul searching that has to happen there.
There is, and we'll be talking about that in the days and weeks ahead. Great call on that one. Thank you very much. Brian Fitzgerald, tech writer, tech editor. Check out his stuff on WSJ.com. I'm Simon Constable, and that was your top 3 in tech.